Hashtag texturenottrivia in Pike Trek and a 4K time machine. Yeah. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland, right through Portal 47, clarity, sanity, and the big picture in Star Trek. Wow. What days these are, what weeks these are, and of course, happy First Contact Day, everybody. And that's going to date this episode for everyone watching months from now, I'm sure. I've got so much to talk about today. The world of Star Trek is exploding in a good way. It's an amazing time. It's an amazing time. And not only that, but I'm 2 days away from going to go visit the Great Experiment Mission Chicago, the first new Reed Pop convention under their long-term license, not counting the 2016 Mission New York, but Mission Chicago, to see what that's going to be all about. And I am promoting only, no program time for me. So it'll be a different experience. And this week has been different. I've had two polar ends here of my old school fandom that have been activated this week. I'm going to tell you all about it. Now, of course, if you're new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, welcome, welcome. All righty. Wacky days. And yeah, I haul out the old Dr. Trek hashtag list here. For texture, not trivia, because first of all, looking backwards into the week, everyone's talking about the Strange New World trailers. Everyone's still talking about Picard, which is a good thing, and the mystery of the Watcher and Laris. Is she Iris the cat, and wouldn't that be awesome, or is that too obvious? All the questions about it's been a week to week explosion of comments and commentary and questions and punditry, and yeah, even the toxic tubers are trying to make hay out of it, but they're not doing a good job. So yay on you all, and yay on fandom, and yay on everybody across the way about stomping that out and just sticking with the fun, what I've started calling the old bar buddy debates. Okay, the good kind of critiquing and excitement in Star Trek, and there's been plenty of it, and now we've been heaped on top of that with this deluge of Strange New World trailers, which I know are coming in advance of whatever news and trailers and peaks and live action are going to come from Mission Chicago this weekend. So it's a prep for all of that. And what's been fun is watching all the reactions to that. And of course, we're going to have an interaction between what we've known, what we've seen, the continuing, and we've talked about it here. I've just about decided that the original series 60s shows that so many of us grew up with, that some folks today have a hard time watching, to be honest. All of that, wherever you come from, is going to be relegated to what the Thermians saw in Galaxy Quest. This needs to be, I think we're going to have this be a show or a panel somewhere. I think we're going to have to say that, as with the motion picture back in the news, and I'm going to get to that, as Admiral Kirk says in his foreword in Gene's novelization, I'm beginning to think that sometimes our missions in the 5-year mission have been greatly dramatized. A little bit like Mark Twain would talk about the Wild West being, glamorized and built up into something much bigger than it was in all the dime store novels back in the day. I think we're going to have to say that the 60s TOS, as much as it pains me, and as much as the next generation were able to go back and refer to it visually in Relics, in Trials and Tribulations, in Inner Mirror Darkly, I think that's going to be relegated somehow to the dime store novel version of the Kirk era. And not that I want to get off on that today, but I think that's happening because obviously now where Strange New Worlds is Art Deco is, there's a huge push to echo the original series, but it's not going to be the same thing. They've got materials and techniques. I mean, they could do it. And it would be even cooler than Inner Mirror Darkly was. And you get down to the layer that we can see now, and you'd see all the detail that you never got to see in the 60s SD, the standard def looks. But that's not the way we've gone. That might have been more and more impossible to sustain even as every decade went by. It's going to be hard enough when we have real warp drive to explain to somebody what dilithium is, because it was an element that was never discovered on the 5th moon of Jupiter. So there's all that in the future. Future fandom will be wrangling over that. But for right now, there's been a lot of fun stuff going on. Now, some of the headlines people are all up in arms about Spock and T'Pring. Spoiler alert, but these are promos, okay? How do we know that is T'Pring? How do we know Spock? Again, kids, texture, not trivia. And here's the thing, we haven't even seen the entire series in its context yet. Now, what I did know, and here's where I'm coming in with part one of today's soapbox, M'Benga was awesome. In fact, when they had the casting list of cast, but no character roles attached to individual actors, I saw that African-American actor and thought, I'm looking at all the other roles and thinking, wow, wouldn't it be funny if that was M'Benga? And it turns out it was. Which then begs the question, 6 months ago, so he's here after Boyce. Boyce is gone. This is post-Cage. This is supposed to be 2259. So we see Mark Piper in the first, Dr. Piper, the first year of Kirk's mission with Where No Man's Gone Before, and then it's McCoy. And it was always very easy to say, well, Piper didn't stay long or didn't work out or whatever. So now we know, well, M'Benga went away and then came back as a subordinate to McCoy because he's made to be the Vulcan specialist. There's all kinds of exciting questions going on there. It just, to me, it was texture, not trivia. It was making the background rich. And now, as my good friend James Kerwin pointed out, M'Benga's got commander's stripes. Unless we're misinterpreting early. Again, this is all the fun of watching when I had 5 seconds this week to look at these things. Now, here we go, in the weeds. If you are not an in-the-weeds Star Trek person, you may want to tune me out. Horrifically. But our minds are already exploding with not that they got this wrong, but that, I'm already trying to figure out what's going to be the big storyline the last year of Strange New Worlds, or at the point where Pike hands off command to Kirk at some point. How many seasons is Strange New World going to run? I mean, if Discovery can do 4, they can surely do 4. But what's the manner of M'Benga's exit? Does he go to intern in that Vulcan ward as he's introduced by McCoy later on? He had 2 appearances in Next Generation. He had 2 appearances in the original series, right? Private Little War and the other one. But they were all after both Amok Time and Journey to Babel. It was like McCoy finds out there's this whole level of Vulcan medicine that's not in the database. What is up with that? It's not just Sarek. There's some seriously screwed up aspects of Vulcan society. I've gotten into this over the year. Maybe that deserves a whole tome of itself. And McCoy just gives up and has M'Benga brought back. And is M'Benga still retaining higher rank? He sends for him and he agrees to come rejoin the ship and be there mainly for Spock and his friends. Or it was always awesome. But you know what? We never saw M'Benga in a long sleeve suit. He was always in his lab smock. He was always addressed as doctor. He was never addressed with a rank. McCoy was a lieutenant commander throughout the original series. And yes, doctors have brevet ranks and they have higher ranks that aren't really commensurate with like combat or command or sciences. Some of the field training, they're a softer rank, but higher, especially if they're in the command structure where they can override commanding officers and that kind of thing. But that's okay. Here's the best thing. What happened to M'Benga? Did he leave of his? Was there a scandal and he was demoted for a doctor to be demoted in rank? Did he go out on some political scandal where he stuck up for his principles? Is this going to be a season 7 Strange New World story? The thing hasn't debuted yet. And maybe we're misinterpreting the stripes on doctors' uniforms differently than commands. I don't know. That sounds far-fetched. I'm in the camp of something happened to his rank and later. We'll see. What's even more juicy is that Chapel appears to have a commander's rank too, unless, again, there's some kind of a medical. I haven't gone. Everybody else is talking about everything else. Here I am focused on Chapel and M'Benga. Most of all, we know, and this is brewing too, just as much as M'Benga or more. We first meet Chapel in the original series when she comes aboard to chase her fiance, Roger Corby, who's disappeared, but there's signs of maybe he's been found. She is said to be, which is wacky because Naked Time was, I know, They were all out of order when they were shown. But her origin story is that she comes to the Enterprise and doesn't know anyone yet. And it's just in her time aboard the Enterprise that she develops her unrequited love for Spock and all of that. So is she part of the issue that sends M'Benga away later? That's going to be fascinating, interesting. And does she have a relationship with Spock now that we weren't privy to when she came aboard to see Corby? Now, I know the doomsdayists out there are all worried about this. The level of savvy, and remember, Dayton Ward's pumping in background, and if he's not, Dave Mack is chomping at the bit right behind him. There's lots of savvy people. I watched the Strange New Worlds writers panel a year ago, and it was the best thing ever because most of the panel, below Henry Alonso Myers, the showrunner, and Alex and Akiva, most of them were dyed-in-the-wool Trek fans. And I'm going to say that after what we're starting to see now with Picard and some of the realignment, even in Discovery, that these kind of primary basic issues aren't going to be just made willy-nilly, that there'll be something behind them and maybe something long-term. My God, I hope so. I'm totally of faith that there will be. Which begs the question, what happened to M'Benga? And what happened to Chapel? Could it be as innocuous as they went away? Because we definitely know, even if Chapel or Christine was never really addressed by rank, at best she was like nurse, like yeomans are addressed as yeoman without their rank being there, and you have to guess, are they an ensign? Are they a non-com in the TOS uniform structure? And by the way, if I've gone into the weeds on you here today, too bad. Hang in there. Because if nothing else, Chapel was Commander Chapel by the time she was in Star Trek 4. But if you go back and look at the memos and things, she was clearly a lieutenant in the motion picture. Alrighty then, that was the intention. So what's going on with her? And was there a scandal with her or some kind of an issue, something controversial? So fine, get excited for Strange New Worlds, this incredible array of characters, and Einar, an engineer, Enar, you say Enar, I say Einar, tomato, and Hemming. It's continuing the Lower Decks tradition of having these bland, waspy names on aliens. That will be interesting. But again, hey, I'm willing to sit for it. I'm willing to sit for a texture, not trivia. Just explain it. I'm sure you will. And if you don't do it now, you'll do it in 2 seasons by the time you realize what you did. But we'll eventually get there. We'll eventually have smooth heads explained, and we'll have English accents on French people explained. Even if it takes 30 years, we'll get there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, okay, fine, I'll watch these early shows for a year or 2. But in the back of my mind, I'm waiting to see what happens to Chapel and M'Benga. Poor Uhura, she's just a cadet here. She's got plenty of time to jump up those 2 ranks and get to lieutenant that we see. And remember, she wasn't even the chief communications officer when Piper was the chief. The first year of Kirk's mission, Lieutenant Alden had the chair back there. So Lloyd Haynes, the great Lloyd Haynes, room 222. So we'll see. But that's interesting. And I guess there's a be it's cinematic. They're going to have spacesuits that aren't going to be silver lame. It's going to be interesting to see. And overall, I'm just going to take my beloved 60s Trek and put it in this box. I'm not kicking it in the trash. I'm not kicking it out the back door. I'm putting it in this loving, decorative box on the shelf as the children's version of real life, the public consumption model of what was delivered to the public during and soon after the Kirk's time. I mean, the Thermians can be confused, but I'm not going to be. And we're going to have to leave it there and not go insanely insane. That's what it is. Now, that was all about going to my canon smoothing, gap filling funness. That was my first fandom explosion. Some people felt the need to run out and write fan fiction. I felt the need to organize and explain the universe. Since they got it halfway down the field, I wanted to take it all the rest of the way down and score, at least in my own brain. Headcanon, schmedcanon. We're gonna do the wholesale. Thank you. We're going to do the whole thing. Who needs little pieces of headcanon when we have big pictures to fill in here, by God? There's missing pages in that tech manual. Did you know that? No, that's what animated. That's what got me excited. And stellar cartography, the same thing. You've heard me tell those stories. That was one activation. That was the mental side of fandom. Last night, I sat through, that sounds horrendous. We got to go to the screening, the premiere event. Actually was thrilled they had one, of a movie that's debuting on streaming. It's a movie that's debuting on streaming. It's there right now on Paramount Plus. Yeah, I'm talking about the Motion Pictures Director's Edition 4K upres, which is a saga on top of a saga on top of a saga. 21 years ago, and we were there talking about it last night, about how we were there in the Paramount Theater lobby on the lot with the hoopla around the premiere of the completed Robert Wise vision for motion picture that wasn't being rushed to meet the deadlines, so the studio didn't lose millions of dollars in penalty fees with theater owners and distributors. They got the motion picture out on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. Should have seen that coming. And it was a huge success then. It was a huge success later on, finishing out Robert Wise's vision. So, yeah. So, David Fine, Mike Matessino, Darren Doctorman, the three-man guru triad, splitting this up and getting it done 21 years ago was amazing. But they had to limit the future and just get the shots done in basically standard def, knowing that the HD revolution was coming down the line, knowing, just like trying to Blu-ray DS9 and Voyager, that they were boxed in and it was going to be another huge quantum leap of effort to get on. And as David told me last night, the technology has caught up with the process, where you don't need a team of 1 million people and $1 million to do it. Well, a lot of money still, but the three of them basically with help, and they've been cataloging it on social media, especially Darren. They have been chronicling their adventure the last year or two and keeping everybody up to pace. Now, you could say, okay, fine, it's another iteration, it's another this, it's another that. Friends, I had sitting in a theater in a big screen experience. So I hope you get to watch this on as big a TV as you can find, yours or friends. And if you get the chance to see it in a theater at some point, and make sure it's the new Director's Edition 4K, yeah, the picture is crisper and all of that, and the audio is amazing. But there were moments. There was at least one moment, tiny detail that I saw for the first time. I always love when I can see something new. That reminds you how rich and how layered Star Trek is, that you're still always seeing something new. There were audio moments that I saw something new. There was a canon moment about the size of the crew that my ears perked up. Yeah, it was background bridge chatter. But then I had to ask, and Mike Matessino told me, yes, it had always been there, but it was buried. And this time on the remix that they did, and not even over 2021, they were able to bring and rearrange some bits to even heighten the drama and the build and discoveries they were making about the film all along. There's some choices they made with titles that kind of are a little bit of a jazz and a jizz there. Yeah, the third act is still a little slower, but this is a quantum leap above the experience you had in 2001. So this is technically a review, and then I'm going to review the experience last night. I'm going to end this all by saying the climactic, what I'll call the V'ger Bowl scene, maybe it was because I was watching it on big screen. And I saw it 6 times on big screen in 1979. And a few times since then at festivals, including the infamous pink screening on original film about 4 or 5 years ago. That was a huge disappointment. Yeah, it was the original film. It wasn't digital. And boy, was it pink. We called it Star Trek, the motion pinkness. Last night, the colors, the richness, yes, the sharpness and clarity. It wasn't 4K porn. You're watching it. Occasionally I would realize how insanely good the picture looked. It was more a factor of the mix of the soundtrack, the audio, sound effects, and voice tracks, and the lighting, the way it had been remastered for color. There's a whole technical process behind that. And there was a progression and a logic. And some of the edits and cuts made just things make more sense. If you saw the Doomsday Machine on the remastered edition that Dave Rossi and Mike and Denise oversaw, you suddenly saw your beloved Doomsday Machine, as much as you love the 60s effects and know that was the most ambitious optical effects episode of the entire original series. 102 effect shots, which is insane for them. Having a CGI'd Doomsday machine that actually choreographed with the Constellation and the Enterprise, the the dialogue lines made sense. It was actually a choreographed battle, a two-way and a three-way battle that finally visually made sense. And you went, oh, this was actually an improvement, as much as your diehard heart wants. That's what I had last night with the motion picture, and especially even the V'ger scene. The flow, the dynamic, the point of view, the look, the coloring, the lighting, the shifts, the evolution as the scene went along was amazing. Friends and neighbors, I felt like I saw the V'ger climax, the V'ger temple it's called, the V'ger bowl scene. I felt like I saw it for the first time last night. You can quote me on that, guy, Paramount. I felt like I saw the ending for the first time last night. It was that. Now, I was in a big theater, and yes, there were fans around me, but there was nary. I mean, I never felt like, even with friends next to me, I felt like not even whispering. I think once I whispered one moment. A lot of the things that come across as funny still work as funny. So much of it still works just fine. The things you want to make a little fun of, you still feel like making a little fun of them then. Kirk rushing in to take over the transporter from Rand and Scotty when they have the accident. Oh, spoilers. Excuse me? We've got the transporter chief and the chief engineer here, and you're going to be the hero. It's fine. You can still laugh about that. McCoy's entrance, the scene just above it before as the other crewmen come in ahead of him, felt like a whole different scene. I'm just gushing. Can you tell I'm gushing? And as an experience last night, I'd forgotten what these were like. We've had 2 years of pandemic. They did a good bit. Everybody from people who worked on the film, although I didn't get to talk to very many of them, to the guys working on the show this time and 21 years ago, to so many folks in the Star Trek professional community that I didn't see. And if you're on anybody's social today, you're seeing tons of pictures up. I haven't put any of mine up. I did one roll around pano when we were sitting in seats. You couldn't see much. You see John Champion's face real big next to me, but yeah, it was amazing. But everybody from Brian Fuller to half of the art staff, the Akutas and Doug and Tim Earls and oh no, see, I'm going to start listing people and I'm going to forget people. But we selfied all night last night in the lobby before going in. So it's like it was a multiple thing. People I hadn't seen in 3 years, people I hadn't seen in 5 or 10 years, and it was awesome to see them. Carrie O'Quinn, who's going to be a big part of the Con of Wrath when we get it done, walked in with him. It was great to see him again from Starlog. So, so many folks, Sandy and Tim from oldstartrek.com and Dave. I mean, and then what was awesome was they had a party afterwards at Scum and Villainy Cantina. It was open to anybody, free drinks, some bar food coming out. And it was amazing. And the conversations went on and on and on. Darren had seen fit to invite Dave Blass. And from the Picard, ballyhooed from Picard's art department, season 2, and yet to be seen season 3. So there were a few new faces, totally under the carpet because no one knew to do that, but that was great. And so many folks from the generations over. And I saw today where Darren Doctorman posted a great tribute to all the folks that have been lost just since the 2001 original director's edition, which of course, again, is trying to fulfill Robert Wise's vision for the movie that was so rushed. They didn't get to do the editing. They didn't get to do all the layers of sound effects and just the atmospheric. The bridge felt so dead. The bridge felt so dark. The visual effects felt so long because they hadn't had time to. It was like, get that sucker done and slap it in there and show it to people. We're just happy to have the damn effect, that effect element done, much less have it edited to the right, the trims on each end, having a flow. And that's why so much, and that was what was done to such great effect in 2001 with the first go round of the lower res director's edition. Just so many things against them. And since then, we've had 4K come along, so we got to skip a generation. And hearing the saga of all three of the guys working on their areas and the aspirations they wanted, I hope you're able to tune in, read interviews, I didn't try to do any of that myself last night. We're going to look at doing something down the line, hopefully on with the Trek Files or with Just some special stuff. Because the info is certainly out there, and it talk about people with a saga. It was a saga to get the first one made. It's been a 20-year saga to get this one done. Had nothing to do, a little bit to do with the 40th anniversary in 2019, but a lot to do with the state of technology, the pandemic scaring a studio that had nothing new to show for 2 years, launching a new platform, Paramount Plus. So a lot of good things happened. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it, if you're getting Paramount Plus already, it's right there. I've been hearing from the Canadians, it's not on their Paramount Plus. What's up with that? I am so sorry. Hopefully that'll be remedied soon. I don't know what the status is in the rest of the world, gang, but I'm going to say that of all the times I've sat through, yeah, even 20 years ago when I saw the remastered, not the remastered, the director's edition edit with a lot of technical tweaking, this was not just taking that and making it sharper. There were some new choices made and even some discoveries, all in service of the storytelling. Again, it's not about 4K porn, the CGI for the CGI of it. It wasn't about that at all. Most of all, they play the overture. And it's not a black screen, it's just a star field. You actually hear the experience from 1979, and that's what set me up for the whole rest of the evening. Sitting there in the dark with the overture playing, it was my own time machine. It was a 4K time machine. It was 1979. What's a little inflation? I wish Jimmy Carter was president. And it puts you back in the mood. And I am a kid again, and I'm watching this thing that I've been waiting. I've only been waiting 5 or 6 years for it. Some people have been waiting 10 years. And any person watching it now, it's no one's fault. You can't help but be there. You could have heard a pin drop during the famous flyby that so much of later fandom and movie critics love to make fun of. But if you were there in that seat in 1979, and I'm going to dare saying most of the folks in that theater last night in 2022, most of them totally got it. It was completely a love affair to the fans to show off, look, we finally got the money to give you the story we wanted to give you. I felt that way with just the pan over the Klingon battle cruisers. I was there from the beginning. The Enterprise was just the cherry on top. The whole experience last night, I got to be a kid again. I got to be a kid again and stare at those models. I got to be a kid again and watch everybody. Got to cheer for your people. I got to tear up when McCoy beamed in, the way I probably did back then. And just to know that it was a beautiful scene, the best rendering of the sequence of the whole movie that I'd ever seen before. It really was that strong. And if you're watching it on even a big plasma in your home, I hope half of this comes through. I hope a chunk of this comes through. Dave was talking about last night about how even if you could sit in a theater, so many theaters aren't set up to actually your home screen may be better established to get you the detail than a lot of movie theaters still. So take heart on that. I hope I have not raised the bar so high on expectations here that you're disappointed. I was sitting in a theater watching it on the huge Paramount Theater screen there, in the best atmosphere of all. But it really was, even with the reunion going on outside and seeing so many folks post-pandemic, it was the movie experience that I haven't thought of in those terms. And so I'd go see a movie, but a theatrical experience of sitting in a huge theater with a huge screen with a wonderful sound system, having left, right, back, four speakers, having it put you in the mood to be there. And not only in the mood to be aboard that ship in that year, but even to be back in those theaters in 1979, where I was in life, with all of life ahead of me, scary and unfulfilled, and having all of Star Trek ahead of me, having no clue where it would go. But for this moment, knowing this, even with some of the disappointments, just being amazed and drawn along and appreciating last night, things to a degree that I could never have appreciated them in 1979 or 1992 at the film festival where they ran all the movies, or anything since, including the watch along that Ali and I did just a few months ago. You know, watching on my iPad, it's not quite the same. At least get as big a screen as you can get to watch this sucker the first time. It is so much more, it's so much warmer. The color palette pops. It does not look like a blob of blue-gray darkness. You actually see a tone range, you actually see the palette come to life. And the sharpness helps that, the tweaking. Okay, I'm going to stop going on and on about it. This little kid who felt like he got into fandom late. I missed the first, wave of 5 or 6 years. So I was a rerun kid. I had to hear about all the stories secondhand or read about them. But still, I was along for the ride. And the phase 2 ride of fandom, what are we up to now? Phase 47. I hope you have as good as, I hope just viscerally watching it as a movie, you have as good an experience as I did, and I haven't blown it up totally for you. But see what you think. If anybody's watched it already, it'll be fun to see your comments, as well as your comments about my retcon madness, my texture not trivia madness with Mabenga and Chapel on Strange New Worlds. And of course, we can talk about Picard. What's up with that? Cat, the whole Isis the cat. I thought it was original 3 weeks ago when I first heard Supervisor, and he saw her standing there. But now apparently it's become a big widespread thing, and that's fine. Wow. Lot to talk about. I should have focused on one of these topics or the other, but I double whammied you this week because we're going to Chicago, and I'm sure next week we will have a ton more revelations and a ton more things to talk about. Again, you can read about news headlines everywhere. I'm trying to bring you a personal touch here, and something that you're not seeing everywhere all over the place. Hopefully it's not the same old you're getting around the interwebs, because here's something you're not getting around the interwebs. Just a couple things to leave with you, okay? Coming up, if you're headed for Trek Vegas, a day ahead, Geek Nation Tours and I are leading our Valley of Fire tour at the Kirk Memorial Tour. It's Wednesday, August 22nd. Go to geeknationtours.com. It's a one day, and we do start early in the morning, so we get back at 2. We're not going to die of heat stroke. We've done this several times, okay? And then I am talking about this if you are coming to Trek Vegas the weekend before in LA, and actually just a few days before the one day in Valley of Fire. But here in LA, the weekend before, we're closing out Gene's centennial year with the trip I wanted to do last year, and we couldn't because of Omicron. Our Great Birds Origins Tour. It's the GR Life Tour, 2 days around LA, going to his life places, his work places, his married family places. Going with that, Rod will be with us for part of the time. Who knows who other guests we may wrangle in with us. It'll be bust. It'll be 2 days. The Hollywood Roosevelt is our hotel, and I've already got a great rate, better than the normal tourist promo rate there. So for now, if you're really interested, get in touch with me. I promise I'll have this up in time. If you save the date, we will get you there. Otherwise, I do want to thank all of our Patreon folks, our TTLers. That's Diana Hopkins, and Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Keith Rombach, Justin Porteous, Nathaniel Robinson, and Blaze K, and our live wires, Rusty Harold, Halbert Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Hoensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Steve Gregory, Gay Clevin Lindstrom, and Casey Shafsky. Join in, help out. I have a very modest, a very simple Patreon, patreon.com/Trekland Live. It's $5, $10 a month for a shout out. $10 is some bonus archival interviews from early Portal 47. Yes, I know. I am months behind on getting those to everybody. They're there. We're getting the infrastructure set up, but it is happening, and we'll get everybody backfilled. All right. Also, the Trek Files is up as usual Tuesday. We went a little feminist this week, and that's good, or sisterhood, as I should say. A memo on sisterhood from the great Dorothy Fontana from the TNG days to Gene as Next Gen was being set up. And who better than Fran Taylor from Sci-Fi Sisters. I don't usually go for other podcast hosts as my guest, but Fran was one I uniquely knew fandom and the 60s and perspective. And so it's lovely to have her with me again to talk about this memo from Dorothy Fontana from 1986. So check out the Trek Files, of course, on Facebook, where our documents are, or wherever your podcasts are. That's great. And podcast.roddenberry.com. There's been a shift in things. The Mission Log empire is expanding. There are other shows, too. There's a really funny Sci-Fi 5 out today I just saw. You should go check that out, too. Yes, Life Support Live is done for now, but you can still go back and see the archive. Otherwise, it's Larry Nemecek on Twitter, where you're watching me right now, Larry Nemecek's Trekland, on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. Lovely to have you on Instagram. A lot of fun stuff. In fact, I just put a fun couple of things up on my reels. Check it out. And portal47.net is like a minicon all year long. If you enjoy deep diving with us, a little bit here on Tuesdays. It's so much more on Tuesdays. Lots of things in the work. I'm excited about some of the guests that we're able to start having now for Portal. Again, Star Trek is exploding, expanding, the new, the old with the new, making those connections. And this community, silver lining out of the pandemic, we've been virtual for 5-6 years, but both in Portal 47 and then in live streaming here. But the rest of the world is catching up to The Secret, and it's an amazing time. It really is. And now it's going to be amazing to see what Mission Chicago brings. So if you are watching later right now on YouTube, you should try to join us live some week. But for those going away, I do want to say, stay healthy. We're not out of the woods yet, totally. Do all the things that they ask, please. Stay woke. Check your sources. And then you're able to trust the information coming at you. Is it real or not? I mean, Trek well, everybody.